Helen Keller was struck blind and deaf when she was only about 18 months old, and therefore she could not speak. Yet she became the first blind, deaf person ever to get her Master of Arts degree. And she went on to become a noted author and lecturer. And she was asked once if there is anything worse than losing your sight. She thought for a moment, and then she replied, yes, losing your vision. We've got to have a vision. We've got to have an image of some future reality that can beckon us, that has calling power for us. This is about a vision each of us must have about our very own lives, and the vision we must have for the world, for the future of the world. Having a vision is absolutely essential to a good life, especially when things are falling apart. In tonight's first reading, it's one of those times when things were falling apart. Habakkuk the prophet writes right around the year 600 BC. The threat of war and capture from the Babylonians is imminent and seems assured. So Habakkuk sees a very, very difficult time ahead for himself and for his people. Judah is basically a prisoner to Babylon now, and will soon be invaded and destroyed. And so the prophet cries out, how long, O Lord? I cry for your help, but you do not listen. I cry out to you, violence, but you do not intervene. Destruction and violence are before me. But then the text says, the word of the Lord came to him. And this is God's response. The first thing was vision. Write down the vision so that one can read it readily. God's first response to Habakkuk in all that ruin and in all that misery is to remind him of the vision. Indeed, difficult times would be those when a vision is most essential. But this vision must be clear, and it must be big, and it must be realistic. The vision must be clear. If it is to have the power to rescue us from the chaos of life and from life's relentless turmoil, even through our own failures, it must be clear so that it can carry us. And when it's clear, it has so much power, this vision. But not only must it be clear, it must be big, bigger than us, bigger than our small-mindedness. This vision to carry us cannot be too tiny. This is not about buying a lake house someday when I retire. When it comes to gospel values, it has to be as big as the world. Clear enough, big enough, and realistic. I could dream forever to be a starter in the NBA. It won't happen. A great vision a truly great vision would be the kind of vision that would correspond to the deepest longings of the human heart, that would nurture our souls, a vision that would offer hope when we are close to despair, courage when we are tempted to give up on life, and trust when suspicions seem to be the most logical attitude. Without these visions, our deepest aspirations will be dulled, and our lives will become flat and boring and finally destructive. Our visions for ourselves, our visions for our most significant relationships, for our marriages, our someday marriages, and our best friendships, and our visions for the world enable you and me to live the full life. And the church will relentlessly challenge us in this, not just to have a vision, but to stay moral in the accomplishment of that vision. This vision, this image of our future, in other words, that good end, that vision, that good end never, ever justifies evil means to get there. How we get there matters as much to the church as the there. And once we make this vision for ourselves, for our marriages, for our church, for our world, once we make this vision our own, from that moment on, we don't need accolades to work towards it. We don't need any thanks. We don't need any awards. We don't need anybody to see how big the sacrifices are. We will be just doing our duty. As Luke tells us in that gospel parable, we are just doing our duty to do everything it takes, to suffer anything it takes, so that that good vision can come true for us. Jesus had a vision for his life that he pursued with an intensity and with a focus unparalleled. It excited him. It excited many in his day, and ours still. If you go to Barnes & Noble these days, any bookstore really, you'll see book after book after book written these days about the power of vision in business and in the churches. No business, no church will succeed without a vision. There's been many times over the last years, if you've been around for a while, when we had businessmen and women come and talk about their experience as Catholic businessmen and women. Many times. And they almost always talked about a time when everything seemed to be collapsing, falling in on itself. They were threatened with failure, and some of them even did. And to a person, they said the one thing that carried them was a clear vision that carried them through to the other side. A clear vision. Now we need to begin to see it in our very own lives. Again, if you've been around for a while, I'll never forget the night that Bill Danforth stood up here in this very same pulpit and shared his personal vision with us. If you were here, you'll remember what he said. My own self, at my very best, all the time. My own self, at my very best, all the time. That vision was passed on in his family for 3 generations. And I'm here to tell you, when you see him live that day in and day out, over and over, holding himself to that vision, it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to see, I can tell you. And that vision took him from being a good man to a great man. And what's more, with all that money and all the means that family had here in St. Louis, they could have turned so much of that to their own advancement, but instead they're emptying themselves of everything. And that good family has become a great family. And the difference they've made in St. Louis will be felt and experienced by many, many people for decades, maybe even centuries to come. Because they had a vision, you see. And they held to it. What is your vision for your future? What are you at your best? What is your marriage, your someday marriage, at its best? What is the world at its best? Because if you fail to have that vision, you fail. Simple as that. It's so important that we need friends and we need communities who will remind us constantly of this vision and who will believe us into it. Someone once wrote, "Turn your face to the sun and the shadows fall behind you." If we turn our face to this vision, if we focus just there, the suffering and the sacrifices of the day, and even our own failures, will fall behind us. Turn your face to the sun, and the shadows fall behind you. Helen Keller was spot on. We would all hate and fear going blind. But we should hate and fear even more losing our vision.